Hey there neighbors, Kevin here with eTrailer, and today we're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install the Demco Coach Air Kit for Demco Air Force One supplemental braking systems here on our 2026 Renegade RV Explorer Class A motorhome. If you plan on towing your vehicle behind your motorhome and your motorhome has air brakes, it is a no-brainer that the Demco Air Force One is the right supplemental braking system for you. This specific kit that I'm going to be talking about today is solely just the coach side of it, so the actual full kit that's also going to tie into your specific towed vehicle can be a little bit different. There's also a couple different options when it comes to these kits for the coach side, depending on what motorhome you have, so that way you can easily tie into your factory air system without having to go through a bunch of extra hoops. Now ours today is just the generic one. This is what's going to tie into most of those standard motorhome air brake systems. So what we're going to be doing is adding in 2 T's right to our tank and then running that out to our tank that's going to come with our coach side, and that's going to run down to our little inlet right here, so that way we can just pop off our cover and easily hook up to our towed vehicle. Now the cool thing about this system is it's not going to give us any false braking, and it's not going to apply the brakes unless the brakes on our motorhome are being applied, which can really help out because a lot of times what happens with some of these other systems is the brakes are getting applied and you don't even know what's happening in your motorhome because you can't really feel a smaller car behind you that you're towing, and you end up damaging the vehicle. And obviously that's not going to be great because you're going from your destination, from your home up to your destination, and you don't want to have to now stop, try and find an auto shop to help fix or repair or replace anything that's going to be broken on that towed vehicle just so that you can continue on with your vacation. So having that security with this only applying the brakes whenever the brakes are applied on your motorhome is going to be a real game changer. Now as far as installation goes, the coach side, super easy. It does take a little bit of work just kind of figuring out which is your metered and which is your supply lines. But once you have that figured out, it's really just tying into it, so getting that nice clean cut, running your airlines. So this side of it is a super easy install. Now the vehicle side of it can be a little bit more difficult. There's a lot more involved when it gets into each specific vehicle, especially with some of the newer vehicles that are out there. So definitely feel free to check out some of our other install videos on specific vehicles through our fit guide, so that way you can find exactly what you're looking for. And if you feel like this is just going to be too much for you, or you just need some help with the install professionally, you can definitely use our dealer locator and enter in your zip code to find a shop near you and get that professionally installed, so you save yourself all that hassle. Now if you are doing this yourself, stick around. We're going to pull this in the shop in just a minute and we'll walk you through the process. Alright, so starting off our install, first thing we need to do is figure out what's going to be our metered air and our supply air. So I've already gone ahead and done that, and based off the picture that we have, this middle valve right here with this hose line running out is going to be our supply. The smaller one that's above it is our metered air. Now from there, I've cleaned them off a bit. You can see how they're all black because they get the same spray all over it that they do for the frame, just to kind of help protect it. We're taking all that off so that way we have a nice clean spot to cut from, and then we can put it in our T's. Now with the T's that they give you, they're going to give you a 5/8 one and a 3/8 one. The 5/8 unfortunately isn't going to work for us today because our supply line is only 1/2 inch, which is written right on it right here. So our 3/8 T is going to be fine. That's going to work perfect for our metered air. So I've already sourced some DOT fittings that are 1/2 inch, so that way we can make our connection here. So at this point, now it's a good time to go and just step on the brakes a bunch, just slowly let all the air out. Don't start the vehicle up. You don't want to have it rebuild all that air pressure. So you want this to be a little bit easier on us. We don't want it just kind of blowing out on you. And if you don't do that, what you can do is just snip about halfway in, let a little bit of the air leak out first, and then cut all the way through. Now when we cut through this, we want to get it about 6 inches back. I want to try and keep it away from a bend because I want to get a nice clean cut here. So make sure that you're using a pair of airline tubing cutters. Make sure that that blade's nice and sharp. You don't want to get any kind of burrs or any stragglers or anything that's going to help prevent the seal from fully forming. To make things a little bit easier, I am going to press in on our fitting here and pop out our airline tubing. There we go. That way I can get a nice straight cut on it. Right about there. Now this part I can push back in, get that locked into place, and now we can add in our T. This one is the 3/8. And now we can bring our other side in. Make sure you get a nice seal on that. Try and wiggle it, pull on it a little bit, make sure it's in there nice and tight. And then we're just gonna do the same thing with our supply. So now it's time to find out where we're gonna mount up our tank here. And I've decided this crossmember is going to be a great spot because we've got plenty of open space here. Now we do need to realize this is going to kind of compress a little bit with the suspension, but not enough to where it should come in contact with our tank here. So I'm going to go to these holes, these lower ones, because there was an airline that's running across here, I'm assuming running down to our brakes, and another hose or wire or something else was looped with it. So I cut the zip ties that were holding it here and raised it up. You can see my zip ties up at the top. I'm trying to hold that up out of the way so that way when we get our bracket here, it's not gonna sit up or out a little bit because it's touching that like it was previously. I tried throwing some spacers on there, but it was just gonna get too big, sticking out too far. I wasn't really happy with that. So now I'm gonna grab our hardware, and we have our bolt. We're gonna have a flat washer that's gonna go on first. That I'm gonna slip through. So I'm gonna put this with the back side of the bracket facing towards me or towards the rear of the motorhome. I'm going to slot that through both our bracket on the tank and then also up onto our cross beam here. After that, we're going to have another flat washer and then a nylock nut. So get both of these in, pop them into the holes here. Throw on flat washer and our nylock nut. All right, I'm gonna snug these down. I'm using a 9/16 wrench and socket. I'm going to grab an extension and tighten this just a little bit more. Make sure it's nice and snug. Once we have this snug, then I can run all of my airlines. So we're going to have our airlines running between here and then up to our T's, which are roughly like 2 feet away, 3 feet maybe. So that'll be super easy. And then from there, what I'm going to do is I'm going to run down this frame rail. Our neighbor asked that we have it on the right side with the other air fittings that are on the trailer hitch at the back here. So that's exactly what I'm going to do for him. I'm going to run it down there, and then I can show you how I did it. All right, so I've got it all ran now and secured. You'll see in some spots I've got some extra line just kind of wound up, and that is just in case we ever have an issue later on. I'd hate for our neighbor to be out on the road, have some kind of leak, and then have to get under here and start working on it, and then find out they don't have enough airline to snip off a little bit, put it back on, and still be able to take back off on their trip. So you'll see I've wound up extra here, and also specifically for our line running from our tank over to the fill port at the back for our, or the connection point to our towed vehicle at the back. I also kind of want to keep that away from our air spring here, so that loop also kind of just helped create a little bit more distance between that. I've zip tied it at multiple spots going all the way down, but before we get into that, let's get over to our T's. So there's a wire harness bundle that's running from front to back of the vehicle here, all the way down the chassis. And I just tied into that with some zip ties. I've got it straight up from my T's onto that, came over to this side closer to our tank, wound up some more line so that we have some extra for both our metered and our supply lines. So we've got our metered is the one that's going to be running down to this lower end here, and that essentially just opens up a lock inside of here so that way we can send that air pressure back. It's going to tell us that our brakes are being activated on our motorhome, so the brakes need to be activated on our tow vehicle. We have our supply, which is just bringing in air. You can see this right here. This is essentially a regulator that's going to help drop that pressure down to something that's a bit more safer to press on the brakes for our towed vehicle. So that all comes down and then runs out to here, which runs back to our port at the back of our motorhome, which for that, once we got past our air spring here, I'm just following the wire harnesses through our frame rail all the way down, and I'm zip tying it every foot or so. Once we get back here, I wound it up some extra again, and then to help that kind of sit up, I did put a zip tie on. It's pretty loose. I didn't want to have it yanking on the airline here, but I wanted to kind of keep it up just because otherwise it's kind of drooping down. Just any little bit of extra precaution we can take is definitely worth it. And then I'm following these other fill port lines that we have here. I did throw on some wire loom and I ran electrical tape over the entirety of it. I wanted to make sure, and I put a little bit extra on this side, just because our airline tubing is really close to the edge of this bracket, so I don't want it rubbing on that corner right there and eventually wearing through. So if it does start to wear through the electrical tape and the wire loom, we're definitely going to know it ahead of time, so that way we can add a little bit more on and give it a little bit more protection. With this being a right angle instead of just a straight insert for the fitting here, it does make it a little bit harder with just where we had to set this up. So anything you can do to help protect that line, definitely going to be important. So now with our lines all ran, we can go and look at the port on the other side here so you can get a better view of it. So now we're outside the backside of our motorhome here. Here's our fitting. So this is what it's going to look like when we're actually hooking up to our towed vehicle. We can take this little cover off, and then with our hose, you're going to see there's going to be a male and female side of it. The female side is going to go to our towed vehicle. Male side is going to go into our motorhome side. On this, you want to pull back on the sleeve. You can push in your fitting, let it pop back, and then it's in there nice and tight. Make sure, just give it a little wiggle, make sure it's not going to pop out, make sure you have it in there correctly, and then we can hook right up to our towed vehicle and have that send back our pressure. This is just kind of an overview, let you see how it's going to be, but we do still need to get under here again and do a leak test to make sure that all of our connections are good. So now that you've kind of got a bigger picture of how this is going to look, let's go ahead and do our leak test. All right, now we're under the vehicle again. I've got my soapy water, and we're going to check every single connection point. So that's going to be all three sides of both our metered air tee and then also our supply tee, as well as all the connection points on our tank as well. So we have the 3 hoses that we ran, plus there's the hose that's running from the top down to our output here. So I'm going to check each one of those, just give it a really good, healthy spray. And what you're looking for is any air bubbles that start forming at these connection points. All right, so each one of our tees was good. Check here at our tank. Nothing on that first one. Now, if you do start seeing some bubbles forming, nothing there. What you want to do is disconnect the hose again. So what you'd have to do is press up. You can see this little gray piece here. Each one of these connection points has a little tab you can push on. What I like to do is just take a wrench the same size as the outer diameter of our tube here. You can use that to press up on that, release it, and then pull the airline tubing out. It will be a little bit easier if you also kind of push in on the airline tubing as you're doing that, because it kind of helps release the teeth that are biting into it. And then once you get that out, make sure that you get a nice, really clean cut with it again. And then you can make sure that you got no leaks. Do another leak test with your spray. I'm not seeing any bubbles forming, so it looks like all of these connection points are good. So the last connection point we have is going to be back at our port at the rear of the vehicle. And looks like we're good back here. So that's going to do it for our leak test. Looks like everything's good to go, no problems. That's going to do it for our look at and installation of the Demco Coach Air Kit for Demco Air Force One supplemental braking systems here in our 2026 Renegade RV Explorer Class A motorhome. My name's Kevin, and if you still have some questions about what's going to be the right supplemental braking system for both your coach and towed vehicle, please feel free to reach out to us via our Ask the Experts link, a comment on this video, or a phone call to our customer service department, and we'd be happy to help you out on your journey.